Before we begin, please like this video, subscribe to Epic Story Spot, and try to listen all the way to the end, because this story starts with a calendar reminder and ends with a choice that changes every life in the room. Lena Ortiz knew every rhythm of Adrian Cole's day. As executive assistant to the city's most public CEO, she padded his schedule with buffers, memorized the weak coffee on 12 and the strong one on 23, and learned that the only time he let his shoulders drop was 5 minutes after midnight when the glass walls of Cole and Weston's top floor turned the skyline into a sheet of mirrors. She wasn't nosy. She was prepared. It's what he paid her for. On a rain-bright Tuesday, a new calendar invite appeared on his phone at 2:13 a.m. It wasn't from Lena. No subject, just a gray dot between meetings, slotted exactly, almost surgically between board prep and press call. Location: Bank of Metropolitan, vault level. No organise. No notes. She frowned, tapped for details, and found a single attached image. The top half of a safe deposit form with a number, 117, and a name smudged to illegibility. Lena told herself it was none of her business. She moved the invite, created the buffer, and closed the window. Then her instincts, sharp as a paper cut, honed by a decade of solving fires before they burned, lit up. It wasn't the bank. It was the time, carefully wedged to look like an elevator ride. It was the lack of organizer in a system that tagged everything. And it was Adrian's face the day before, at 12:07 p.m., when he stared too long at a news ticker crawling across the lobby screen. Local family seeks answers ein decadaldi hit and run. She spent her lunch break at her desk with a plastic fork and the bank's website open. Vault hours. Safe deposit policies. She noted a small clause. Client must present original key. She told herself again it wasn't her business. She told herself again when Adrian walked in late, rain in his hair, tie clutched in one hand, and a city sheen behind him like a secret. She told herself again when he said, "Can you push the press call?" Something came up. She nodded, did it, and watched him go. At 2:28 p.m., she took the elevator to the lobby and stepped into the rain. The bank was 3 blocks away. She counted them by crosswalk lights. The teller line was long. The vault clerk, cheerful. Lena used the same tone she used to get vendors to move mountains. I'm confirming access for Mr. Cole on box 117. Of course, the clerk said, fingers flying. Then she hesitated just enough that Lena heard it. Yes, he's on file. He's with the guest. I'll wait, Lena said, and took a seat where she could see the vault door. Adrian came out 20 minutes later, not seeing her because he was looking at his hands. In his left, an old key. In his right, a simple envelope thick enough to matter. The jaw he showed the cameras, confident, clever, disarming, was clenched. For a second, walking into the rain, he looked like a person whose future had just arrived uninvited. He didn't see Lena until the car. She didn't follow. She returned to the office, rescheduled the press call again, and told herself she could stop thinking about it. She couldn't. That night, the cleaning crew hummed through the halls. Lena stayed late to set up morning packets. On Adrian's desk, under the glass blotter, she saw a corner of the envelope he'd carried, now flattened out. She didn't touch it. She straightened his pens and saw, reflected on the glass, a name in messy, urgent hand. Mercer. She knew that name. In 10 years of arranging charitable giving, she'd seen it attached to the memorial scholarship the company funded quietly at Riverton Community College. The Mercer Fund. No press. No photo ops. One of Adrian's earliest acts as CEO, buried beneath 100 sleek campaigns. She didn't sleep much. In the morning, she printed the press release, the board book, and a question she wouldn't ask. She didn't have to. At 9:07 a.m., Adrian closed the door and said, "You saw something." "I saw a bank appointment," Lena said carefully. "And I saw the name Mercer." He sat, leaned his elbows on the desk, and stared through the glass wall at a city he mostly controlled and a past he never had. "You're the only person here I trust." he said. That's why I'm going to tell you a story that could snap this company like a wishbone. She didn't move. He took a breath that sounded like opening a window that had been painted shut. Before I was Adrian Cole, he said, I was Adrian Martinez. My mother cleaned offices at night. My stepfather drank. I left Riverton after high school with a scholarship and a car that didn't like hills. I came back 2 summers later to help my mother leave him. One night, I borrowed a friend's truck. On the way home, at a 4-way stop by the canning plant, there was a flash, a sound I still hear, and a boy on a bike went down. The truck in front of me ran the sign. It clipped the kid and kept going. I stopped. I called 911. I tried to keep him awake. When the sirens came, the other truck was gone. The boy's name was Kyle Mercer. He died on the way to the hospital. Adrian stared down at his hands, the hands that carried envelopes. The police asked questions. My friend's truck had a dent. My prints were on the wheel. The other driver's plate was 1 letter off mine. The family wanted someone to blame. The town wanted it, too. An attorney told me if I pled to leaving the scene, which I did not, he could keep me out of prison. I took the deal. I thought I could make it right after. I didn't. I ran. I remade myself and built something big enough to hide in. And I've been paying, quietly, to a fund in that boy's name, as if money could ever balance what grief can't. Lena's voice sounded distant to her own ears. And yesterday, the envelope was from a man named Martin Keene, Adrian said. He's our CFO. He found the file attached to the Mercer Fund. Not the public one. The private one with my original name, the plea deal, the sealed records. He wrote a number on a note the way you write a ransom. If I don't step down and sign the company over to him and his shell holders, he'll take it to the board, the press, my children's school. He'll make sure the only story anyone hears is the ugliest one. He's blackmailing you, Lena said flatly. Adrian let out a laugh that had no humor in it. He's auditing me. What do you want to do? Lena asked. Her pulse was loud in her throat. Her job was organizing days, not absolving decades. But he had asked. More than that, he had told her the kind of truth that makes the listener complicit. I want to make it right, Adrian said. I want to tell my wife. I want to tell the Mercers to their faces. I want to resign for the right reason, not the wrong one. But I also want to protect my children. I want to pay for what I did and not let a man like Martin own the price. Lena said, then we don't let him. We take the story back. He looked up, hope and fear wrestling in his eyes. How? First, we verify everything, she said, and watched surprise flicker. Because the one thing worse than hiding a truth is telling it wrong. Second, we set meetings you can't cancel. Third, we build a plan that's bigger than a headline. They went to Riverton on a Saturday with no entourage. Lena drove. He watched the fields blur and rehearsed the apology in his head until it sounded like words he hadn't earned yet. The Mercers lived in a low, clean house with a wind chime that made a sound like rain on glass. Mrs. Mercer answered the door with a face that had been brave too long. Mrs. Mercer, Adrian said, voice raw. My name is Adrian Martinez. I was there the night your son. She closed her eyes. I know who you are, she said quietly. You send a check every year in a plain envelope. I never cashed them. Then 5 years ago I did, because Kyle's sister wanted to be a nurse. She graduated last spring. I used to think forgiveness was a door someone else had to open for me. It wasn't. It was a door I had to open for myself. I wanted you to knock anyway. He swallowed. I'm here to tell you the truth. I didn't hit your son. I was first on the scene. I took a deal because I was poor and scared. That's not an excuse. It's just the shape of the mistake I made next. Do you know who did? She asked, and the way she asked told Lena that this was the question that woke her every night and put her to bed again without answers. Not then, Adrian said. Now maybe. He looked at Lena. The Riverton police report had listed a witness, a night shift guard at the canning plant. He died years ago, but his daughter still lived in town. She met them on a diner patio and brought a shoebox. Inside, her father's old notebook and a Polaroid of a truck leaving the plant at 10:11 p.m. The plate was clear. The truck belonged to a man named Charles Keene, supervisor of the plant, father of a boy who would later intern at Cole and Weston and become very good at stepping into money like it was an empty elevator. Mrs. Mercer's hands trembled over the photo. She wasn't crying. She'd run out of tears years ago and replaced them with something tougher. "So that's why your man thinks he can own you," she said. "Because he thinks you won't put his father's name in your mouth." "I'll put it there," Adrian said softly. "I'll put my name there, too." They drove back in silence, broken only by the weather report. In the city, Lena drafted a plan. Step 1. Tell Elise, his wife, before anyone had the chance to tell her for him. Step 2. Engage Ms. Patel, now a high-profile attorney, to help unseal the old plea and file to amend the record with the new evidence. Step 3. Request a meeting with the board not to negotiate with Martin, but to preempt him. Step 4. A press conference only after the first 3 were done, with Mrs. Mercer's consent and presence if she wanted it. Step 5. Resign. "You're telling me to light the match," Adrian said when she finished, "and then walk into the fire." "I'm telling you to stop living in a house made of smoke," she said. He laughed, then didn't. "Will you stand with me when I do it?" "Yes," she said, and meant it even though she understood exactly how much that promise could cost her. Elise listened to her husband on a Sunday afternoon while their children built a blanket fort that turned the living room into a tinted city of innocence. She didn't shout. She set down her tea and held both his hands. "I married you because you told the truth when it cost you more to tell it than to hide it," she said. "I stayed married to you when you stopped telling the truth to yourself. I want our children to know the difference. So we do this right." Ms. Patel took the case like a surgeon takes a scalpel. The filing to unseal the plea read like a confession and a correction. She called the Riverton DEA, who surprised everyone by saying, "I've wanted this cleaned up for a decade." She called Mr. Keene Sr., who refused to answer. She called the old plant foreman, who said, "We all knew, but the world was meaner then." She called Mrs. Mercer, who said, "I'll stand up there with him if it keeps another mother from standing alone." When the board meeting began, Martin Keene's hair was perfect and his smile was wrong. He opened his laptop, connected to the projector, and cleared his throat as if about to perform a kindness. Adrian stood first. "I need to tell you something," he said, and told them everything. He told them about Riverton. He told them about Kyle. He told them about the plea and the cowardice and the cost. He held up the Polaroid of a truck leaving a plant, the number on the plate crisp as a sentence. He did not say the name Keene. He didn't have to. The room exhaled. Martin went pale in a way that wasn't shame. "This is a pathetic attempt to distract from your crimes," he said. "You think coming clean buys you a halo?" "Coming clean buys me a life," Adrian said. "You, Martin, try to sell it." "You'll ruin the company," Martin snapped. "You'll drag us all down so you can play saint." "Companies don't drown in truth," Lena said before she could stop herself. Every eye turned. She didn't flinch. "They drown in fear. We propose a transition, a trust, a foundation in Kyle's name, and a leadership plan that doesn't leave shareholders guessing. You propose theft." The chair cleared her throat. "Mr. Keene, do you have any disclosures to make related to your family's past or to your involvement in attempting to coerce the CEO?" Martin closed his laptop. He was thinking, finally, like a man who had run out of angles. "You'll hear from my lawyers," he said, and walked out. He did not come to the press conference 2 days later. The podium stood under the glass atrium. Cameras clicked. Lena stood behind the front row with Elise and Mrs. Mercer. Adrian stepped up and told the story again, because telling it once doesn't make it stop being true. He apologized without excuse. He announced his resignation. He announced the endowment in Kyle Mercer's name funded by his own stake, and the creation of a community safety fund in Riverton. He announced a leadership slate that didn't include anyone named Keene. Questions came like hail. He answered the fair ones. Ms. Patel took the legal ones. He let the ugly ones fall to the floor. When it was over, Mrs. Mercer stepped to the mic. "I don't forgive accidents," she said. "I forgive people, not with money, with the courage to change." She nodded at Adrian. He's changing. That doesn't bring my boy back, but it might bring someone else home. The company's stock dipped and then steadied. Editorials split the difference between grudging respect and reflexive scorn. Online, the loudest thing was the smallest, a clip of Mrs. Mercer putting a hand on Elise's shoulder and Elise leaning into it. The Mercer's daughter wrote an op-ed about becoming a nurse. In Riverton, a line formed at the DA's office of people who'd been scared to speak in 2012 but weren't now. A retired plant foreman signed a statement that no one demanded. Mr. Keene Sr. moved to Florida. Lena quit on a Friday afternoon with a letter that thanked Adrian for the hardest, strangest, most human job of her life. He tried to talk her out of it. She smiled. I don't know how to be the assistant to a man who doesn't need one because he's about to become himself, she said. Also, I got an offer. Anyone I'll approve of? He asked. The Riverton Community Foundation, she said. They need a director who can keep a calendar and move a mountain. He laughed and looked like a person whose shoulders might one day stay down. Take my vote to their board, he said, and my first donation. They hugged in an office that would soon belong to someone else and walked to the elevator together. Cameras flashed in the lobby. Adrian raised a hand and didn't give a soundbite. Outside, Elise waited, hair in a knot, eyes kind, a woman who had decided to build a future out of lumber reclaimed from a house that didn't stand anymore. Lena drove to Riverton on Monday in a second-hand sedan that smelled like lemon cleaner and possibility. She found a small office with a crooked sign and 2 employees who called her boss and then apologized for it. She taped a photo of the tide-smooth river to the wall where she could see it while she worked. She built a scholarship process that required essays about what help feels like to receive and to give. She helped the town draft a pedestrian safety plan and fund a crosswalk at the canning plant that had since become apartments with a new name. She learned the names of every mother who sat across her desk and told a story out loud for the first time. Months later, on a warm Saturday, the foundation hosted a picnic by the river. There was lemonade, fried chicken, and a table of cupcakes that sweated their frosting under a tent. Elise brought the kids. Adrian came with a baseball glove and the knack he had always had for making hard conversations feel like bridges instead of cliffs. Mrs. Mercer came with her daughter, who wore her nursing badge on a lanyard she hadn't bothered to take off after a shift. Lena walked to the water as the kids shrieked and thought of the first calendar invite, the grade that had turned into a life. She felt a presence at her shoulder and turned. Adrian stood there, hands in his pockets, sunlight on his face like forgiveness. Do you ever think about how all this could have gone wrong? He asked. All the time, she said. And then I remember that the difference between ruin and redemption is timing and help. Thank you for both, he said. You did the hard part, she said. You told the truth. He nodded toward the picnic. Look what the truth paid for. They watched the Mercers laugh with Elise like people who share not a tragedy, but a table. They watched a dozen families who've been waiting for a different kind of check, the kind with no dollars on it, line up to ask about scholarships, bus passes, medical copays. Lena's phone buzzed. Another calendar invite. It was from a high school counselor. Can we talk about the kid who keeps sneaking into the library to sleep? Lena added a buffer, and smiled at a rhythm she knew by heart. That night, back in the city, Martin Keene's press release about his new venture landed without a thud because no one cared. The company he tried to steal did just fine under a quiet, competent successor. Adrian took a seat on the board of the foundation instead of at the head of a table that had made him small. He taught his son to keep his hands at 10 and 2 and his daughter to stop at every 4-way, even if it wasn't her turn. He took Elise on a trip to a place with bad Wi-Fi and good bread, and they remembered how to talk about nothing. Lena learned, finally, that some secrets rot a house and some secrets grow a garden, and the only way to tell the difference is to hold them up to daylight. She learned to build days with room in them for mercy. She kept a brass key on her desk, the safe deposit key Adrian had handed her the day he resigned, not as a burden, but as a reminder. On a slip of paper in the drawer, she wrote a line for herself. Return me where the light begins. Thank you for listening. If this story kept you hooked, please like the video, subscribe to Epic Story Spot, and drop a comment about what you think Lena should take on next. We post new, uplifting stories every day.